I will never fight this black ass. This was the word from the boxing legend John L. Sullivan. Yes, these were the words from him. So, all the boxing fans from all over the world, please gather round because today we're diving headfirst into one of the most controversial and scandalous moments in sports history. It's a tale of triumph, ego, racial tensions, and a decision that forever tarnished the legacy of America's first true sports superstar, John L. Sullivan. Yeah, we're going there. Buckle up. Picture it. The late 19th century, boxing was raw, wild, and downright illegal in most places. It was the sport of the streets and saloons, not the pristine arenas we think of today. And at the very top of this rough and tumble world stood one man, John L. Sullivan, the Boston strong boy, the bare-knuckle bruiser, the guy who declared he could lick any man in the world, any man, as long as they were white. Yep, that's where the story takes a dark turn. Enter Peter Jackson, known as the Black Prince. Born in the West Indies, raised in Australia, and an absolute force of nature in the ring. This guy wasn't just good, he was phenomenal. Jackson was fast, strategic, and tougher than a $2 steak. In an era where opportunities for black fighters were nearly non-existent, Jackson clawed his way to the top, beating opponents left and right. He was the real deal. But here's the kicker. As Peter Jackson climbed the ranks, boxing fans started asking the million-dollar question. When will Sullivan fight Jackson? When, indeed. Well, John L. Sullivan wasn't having it, not one bit. Let's back up for a second. By the time Jackson was making waves, Sullivan was already a living legend. He'd toured the country, beaten every challenger who dared step into the ring, and become a symbol of American toughness. But Sullivan was also a product of his time. A deeply racist time. Yeah, you heard that right. Sullivan outright refused to fight any black boxer, no matter how talented, and at that time, Peter Jackson was one of the greatest black boxers in the world. This wasn't just some offhand comment. He lived by this racist code, even as the demand for a match against Peter Jackson reached fever pitch. Fans wanted it. Promoters wanted it. Hell, even some of Sullivan's friends wanted it. But the Boston strong boy stood firm. Now, let's be real here. This wasn't just about Sullivan. The late 1800s were a cesspool of racial prejudice in America. Boxing, like every other facet of life, was segregated. Black fighters were often denied opportunities, no matter how talented they were. But Peter Jackson was different. He was undeniable. He was so good that white America couldn't ignore him. And that's what made Sullivan's refusal so damn infuriating. Peter Jackson was the logical next step. He was the one man who could challenge Sullivan's claim as the best in the world, but Sullivan wouldn't give him the chance. Why? Because Jackson's very existence threatened the fragile, racist ego of a society that didn't want to see a black man on top. Of course, people talked. And when I say talked, I mean they argued about this for years. Some fans defended Sullivan, saying he didn't need to fight Jackson. Others called him out for being a coward. And let's not mince words here. It was cowardly. For all his bravado, for all his lick any man talk, Sullivan chickened out. Plain and simple. And let's be clear, Sullivan's decision wasn't just a bad look. It robbed history. It robbed boxing fans of what could have been one of the greatest fights of all time. Imagine it, the raw power of Sullivan versus the technical brilliance of Jackson. We'll never know who would have won, and that's a damn shame. Now, let me paint a picture for you. What if Sullivan had agreed to fight Jackson? What if he'd set aside his prejudice and stepped into the ring? Would it have changed the course of boxing history? Could it have challenged the racial barriers of the time? We'll never know. But what we do know is that Sullivan's refusal set a precedent. It reinforced the racial divide in boxing, a divide that would take decades to overcome. So here's the deal. John L. Sullivan was a badass. He was tough as nails, a pioneer, and an icon. But he was also a flawed, stubborn, and deeply prejudiced man. His refusal to fight Peter Jackson is a stain on his legacy, one that can't be ignored. Peter Jackson never got the chance to prove himself against Sullivan. But make no mistake, he's a legend in his own right. And his story and Sullivan's refusal serve as a reminder of how far we've come and how far we still have to go. So what do you think? Was Sullivan just a man of his time, or was he a coward hiding behind prejudice? Let us know in the comments below. And hey, if you learned something new today, hit that like button and subscribe for more untold stories from the world of sports. Until next time, keep fighting for what's right.